Good evening and welcome to Northbeat. I'm Shannon Scott. We begin tonight in Nunavut, the site of a whirlwind visit by some high-profile federal cabinet ministers. TJ Deer tells us what they're doing in Iqaluit.
Today was all about business. Arctic sovereignty was the topic at hand. It's part of the federal government's updated defense policy, which emphasizes claiming northern land and waterways for Canada. Defense Minister Bill Blair says he met with Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated about investing in multi-use infrastructure.
I think there's a great opportunity for us to create jobs and economic prosperity and a healthier, safer, more resilient Canada in the north through these investments. But it's only going to work if we do it together, if we do it in partnership, if we engage with them in an appropriate way.
And Northern Affairs Minister Dan Vandal says that's how they want to do business in the north.
When we talk about northern sovereignty, we talk about quality of life. We talk about good housing. We talk about good education. We talk about modern infrastructure, connectivity, to make sure that people here are involved in their day-to-day life.
Canada's not the only country that wants to operate in the Arctic. Minister Blair said if Russia wanted to move in, they could, and that China is buying their way in. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly said balancing foreign interests with Inuit is why they came here.
The implementation of it needs to be linked to what Inuit people and Indigenous people think. And they have the knowledge. We've put making sure that the Indigenous people of our country would be at the core of the decision making, particularly when we're talking about the Arctic.
But Ottawa's plan doesn't have universal support. The Arctic Research Foundation has issued their own strategy with support from Nunavut MP Lori Idlout. Foundation CEO Tom Hennifer says Ottawa's approach isn't the best one.
It's good that they're doing this additional work, but the issue is that the federal government historically and still today tends to look at the Arctic through each individual departmental lens, as opposed to taking a holistic actual approach to it.
Hennifer says their plan is done and hopes Ottawa will use it to enhance their own. All three cabinet ministers said they hope to build back trust, make up for past mistakes, and work together with Inuit. TJ Deer, CBC News, Iqaluit.
Well, we heard a bit there from the Federal Minister of Foreign Affairs, Melanie Joly. She says it's not often the person with her portfolio visits the Arctic. And well, at our CBC studio in Iqaluit today, she explained why this trip is important.
We need to address the fact that for a long time, we always thought that because of our geography, we would be safe in the world. But the reality is things have changed. And following Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, the tectonic plates of the world power structures moved. And we are now living in a world that is much more unpredictable. And so that's why we decided to really work on the protection of our own sovereignty, which of course we're very strong at, but also addressing our key security concerns. And so you saw that the Minister of Defense, and we've met with him, and that's why we're all here, announced the defense policy update. This defense policy update was about making sure that we were putting, for the first time in our history, so much emphasis on the security of the Arctic. On my side, on the foreign policy side, I'm supporting, of course, the work on that the Minister of Defense is doing, but also what I'm doing is we're working on addressing what can we do diplomatically to address also the protection of our sovereignty and security concerns. I'll give you an example. We now have Sweden and Finland part of NATO. We should be closer than ever to the 7 Arctic nations of the 8 that are our allies, that are part of NATO. The US, all the Nordic 5, ourselves. And the Arctic Council, which is composed of all the nations I've just mentioned, plus Russia, has not met since Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. So what do we do about that? How can we be closer to our allies? How can we make sure that we talk about Arctic issues together, but at the same time that we continue to put maximum pressure on Russia? So these are the things that I'm here to talk about with the premiers, with Indigenous leaders. I met with the mayor to really hear the perspective of people here in the north, because we're talking about the north. So of course, people in the north that most know about the north needs to be able to have their say about what we're working on.
That was Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly. She's in Iqaluit along with other ministers talking about Arctic sovereignty. Well, in Whitehorse today, the federal government announced a $45 million investment towards stabilizing the Robert Service Way escarpment. This after another landslide over the weekend. Maria Tobin reports.
Protecting the land. That's the purpose of this project. And after years of consistent spring slides, including one of upward 700 cubic meters Saturday, it's welcomed by city and federal officials. The plan is to move Robert Service Way and Millennium Trail even farther away from the escarpment, as well as regrading the slope, expanding barriers, and using anti-erosion measures like digging out dirt and rocks.
As Whitehorse continues to grow, it is important that we prevent the continued erosion of this place, and to making sure that we have the right infrastructure now to build a prosperous and more sustainable future for everyone.
Mayor Laura Cabot says it won't be an overnight fix. She says the project needs to be assessed by the Environment Review Board and get the proper licenses in place. Cabot says it'll take about 5 years to complete the project.
And then construction, I understand, would probably take a couple of years. So we're looking at 5-6 years before the final work is done, and that's an estimate. The dial is changing all the time.
Climate change is an everlasting problem in Canada and is happening at a faster rate here in the north. Officials say this project will help the city adapt. Maria Tobin, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Yesterday was National Red Dress Day, but Yellowknifers waited until today to honor missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. People walked from the legislature to the Tree of Peace Friendship Centre to show their support. Robert Holden was there.
The event was hosted by the Yellowknife Women's Society. Hundreds could be seen walking the streets together, some in red clothing, honoring missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people.
We have a co-worker that I work with. She missed her daughters 9 years ago. And we're in together as a group for everybody, not just for women, for men as well, and supporting them.
It's nice to stand with my 2 girls, as well as my son, and just be with all the other women and the young girls who are hurting and going through this day on a personal level.
Red Dress Day was started in 2010 by Métis artist Jamie Black. 14 years later, and it's a nationwide event.
It's really encouraging to see so many people, and a lot of young people too, kids like some high school students, so it's great.
Elizabeth Biscay is the director of the Gender Equity Division for the Government of the Northwest Territories. She spoke at the beginning of the walk, encouraging onlookers to educate themselves on the statistics.
Between 1980 and 2022, 8,273 women have gone missing in Canada. Of that, 1,404 are Indigenous women, and of that, 61 Indigenous women from the Northwest Territories that have been killed or gone missing. So the numbers are fairly alarming considering our population is not that big here in the territories.
The walk ended at the Tree of Peace Friendship Centre, where there was stew and bannock waiting for everyone. Robert Holden, CBC News, Yellowknife.
"15 pieces of artwork were on display at the Aksarnit Hotel in Iqaluit yesterday for Red Dress Day. The exhibit was organized by the Kulit Nunavut Status of Women Council. Nunavut's Minister for the Status of Women says it takes every government department to help solve the problem.
We have to continue advocating and providing services to our communities, our youth in the communities, to continue educating and providing supports, especially when it becomes to violence or sexual abuse. Those are things that are too high in our territory, and we need to help eliminate that.
The government says the artwork will be on display once more in Iqaluit before moving on to other communities in the fall. Well, the NWT's RCMP chief superintendent and commanding officer is leaving after less than 2 years in the job. Sidney Leckie says he's happy with what he's achieved during his time in the territory, specifically when it comes to reconciliation. Leckie says as an Indigenous person, reconciliation was a priority when he took the job. He says he traveled to as many communities as he could, meeting leaders and going to gatherings. He says he wanted to get the message out that the RCMP is a responsive and sensitive service.
It's about the presence and the understanding of why we're here. It's really tough for many folks, especially if you don't have an Indigenous background or if you haven't lived and worked in those communities, to have an appreciation and understanding of what brings us here as Indigenous people, the challenges, the historical challenges that have gotten us here, the role that police had in the past, and that this is different. Reconciliation means many different things to many different people, but what it does mean is we are doing things differently than we have in the past, and how we approach people, how we engage in our communities, how we work and provide not just a sensitive and culturally responsive service, but just an appreciation and understanding of what it is that brings us here. So that's been kind of the primary goal. We've certainly had training opportunities. We've had, cultural sensitivity training.
Chief Superintendent Leckie says he's moving to Ontario, where he'll be the Chief of Police for the Timmins Police Service. Well, the remediation plans for the Faro mine in Yukon will not include carbon offsetting. That's because the federal government says it's not possible. Ottawa says the technology needed to do it just doesn't exist yet, nor do the regulations. A sustainability expert at UBC says the project is an opportunity to create the necessary rules.
Could show a little bit more of a commitment to maybe working with the territory to develop those protocols, or could signal some sort of aspiration towards being like an exemplary or leading project in this area, because Faro is a very, very large contaminated area due to an abandoned mine, but it's certainly not the only one in Canada.
The assessment board will now review the feedback it's received and will then issue recommendations. It's been a few years since Starlink came on the scene in the north, and the company is rapidly changing the landscape, both literally and figuratively. Starlink dishes are everywhere in the communities, and people have internet access like never before. But what does that mean for people's lives and for the company, Northwestel, that used to be virtually the sole provider? The CBC's Luke Carroll has been looking into this and joins me now in studio. So, Luke, first things first, just how popular is Starlink right now?
Well, why don't we have a listen to what Tyrone Ratty of Tuktoyaktuk had to say about it?
It's just like the Edmonton Oilers. Yeah, everybody has them. Everybody is a fan of them for sure.
Now, I'm not positive about the number of Oilers fans there, but Starlink's popularity I am sure of. I called people in Sax Harbor and Gamity and was told that basically every household in those communities have one. In the fall, a nonprofit launched a pilot program that offers free Starlink internet to people in Ulahuktuk using SIM cards. But many in the community say there's limited uptake because people already own one. In Enterprise, Michael St. Amour, the former mayor and current Hamlet councillor, says there's about a dozen in town now, and he feels really good about that. If you remember last year, the community had to evacuate in a communications outage, and he says they relied on the only 2 Starlinks that they had in town at that time.
So, for so long, of course, the only choice for many people in many communities was Northwestel. How is this switch to this new technology affecting the legacy company?
Yeah, so we don't know the numbers of people who've switched from Northwestel to Starlink. I asked Northwestel for that number, but was told they didn't have it available. I reached out to SpaceX, who owns Starlink, and I never heard back. But at least in the remote communities that I reached out to directly, Starlink seems to be taking over. Now, I spoke with Catherine Newsom with Northwestel, and she says the company is still confident it's the best and most popular option in the north. She talked about why she thinks that's the case.
And secondly is our technology. We have a fiber-powered network. We've been rolling out fiber left, right, and center, and we're now offering 500 megabyte per second download speeds, unlimited monthly data. It's the fastest home internet you can get in the north, and it's built for modern broadband. And it's really a superior technology type, the same type of technology that powers downtown Calgary.
So Newsom also talks about how the company employs hundreds of Northerners and invests in local organizations and causes. Now, I asked Newsom about the overage charges, this being, a big issue to many customers. And she says they're aware of the monthly usage amounts, that they can be challenging, and that Northwestel wants to bring unlimited monthly usage in those remote communities, like Sax Harbor and Gamity. Now, Northwestel has launched a program to use new low-orbit satellites to a series of communities. And this happened around the same time that Starlink came on the scene.
Now, that's the same technology that Starlink uses, is that correct? The low Earth orbit?
Yeah.
So how is it working for Northwestel?
So I spoke with Tom Zubko. He runs New North Networks. It's a local internet provider in Inuvik. And here's his analysis of that program that Northwestel is launching.
I mean, as you know, they got quite a big injection of money a few months ago for satellite-only communities, and I suspect that that service is very, very, very undersubscribed. Even if it's subscribed at all, I don't really know. I'm not even sure in most places if it's been turned on or not.
So from the sounds of it, not a very popular option, Shannon.
Now, a lot of infrastructure projects like the Mackenzie Valley fiber optic line were started before Starlink was even a dream in a northerner's eye, right? What is happening with projects like that?
So the latest iteration of that project involves extending the fiber optic line from Inuvik to Tuktoyaktuk. And a spokesperson from the territorial government said in an email that at least the Tuktoyaktuk project is continuing because it will bring better internet than what can be accessed through Starlink. Northwestel argues, the same point. So it'll be interesting to see what the uptake is, considering what Ratty said about Starlink's popularity, Shannon.
All right, Luke, lots of changes always happening here in our home territory. Thanks so much for telling us about it.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, I'm Abel. I often forget to mention that he's an amputee because Abel will try any activity he can. My arm helps me with basically everything. He doesn't see what he can't do, he sees what he can do. Yeah, this is helping. The War Amps has just given him the ability to do all the activities every kid can do. When you donate to the War Amps, you help kids like me. Thank you!
Tama kay muksak palilaw kapta awla yinalat po kugyang mulo amalokok biyo yamon tinga liwaling mulo pangolo asyang miyo muna toy mo ina daile takpa nga kay muksak palilaw sa mga tayo mabuhat taling ni pilariyo lak sa mga inyuin ami chalo walang mata.
When we see Team Canada on the world stage, we're witnessing pure greatness. What we don't see is their struggle. We don't see Maggie McNeil navigating her anxiety, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander getting cut from his high school team, or Ellie Black hearing she's just too old to compete. What we don't see makes us who we are. We're all bravely facing the odds in our lives, and our bravery is our victory.
This is the CFBC's largest attachment, home to elite units, federal and municipal scope. Congratulations on making the cut.
Have you spoken with your father?
I'm coming for you and everyone like you.
I would rather be Baroque than blue. There's lots of reasons to not be a cop. And a Surrey girl should know all of them.
Maybe you should reconsider the uniform and everything that it represents.
I'd rather fight from inside it to make a change.
Everyone listen up.
Bursting with flavor.
All these guys 21?
Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Owning an NHL team.
Penguins had us review your offer, and it looks good.
Wow. Get me on the phone with Cops Coliseum. Tell them I want to buy it.
They're ubiquitous in gyms and yoga studios pretty much everywhere. Lululemon workout clothes. But now the Canadian company is facing new accusations of greenwashing. Nisha Patel reports.
Lululemon makes activewear that's known around the world. Now climate activists allege the company is misleading its customers.
They're saying the products are very good for the environment, very good for the climate, and they are terrible. They create massive amounts of climate pollution.
Environmental group Stand.Earth claims the brand markets itself as climate friendly while creating massive greenhouse gas emissions.
We made a move for the planet. You'll never feel the difference.
The Competition Bureau is investigating and says there's no conclusion of wrongdoing at this time. But if the watchdog finds the complaint is valid, Lululemon could face hefty fines. Though what advocates really want from the retailer is change.
We would like to create a win-win solution with Lululemon to see them really target and eliminate the climate pollution in their supply chain.
Experts say it's not just Lululemon. Climate impact remains a big issue across the fashion industry.
Lots of polyester, all of these petroleum-derived synthetic fabrics. And when we produce them at the scale, even if we did it sustainably, there's still going to be impact.
And shoppers say that's something they're thinking about.
It definitely does bother me because they are such a big company. They probably have a lot more resources to be more eco-friendly and green.
Well, it bothers me when any company says they're going to do something and they sort of greenwash.
Lululemon didn't respond to a request for comment, but the company has stated in the past that it's committed to its decarbonization plan. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
We see it here in the north, a family struck by tragedy, floods, fires, or storms, and their friends and families turn to crowdfunding to help them get through it. Experts say this highlights how government programs and insurance coverage isn't always enough. Ben Shingler has that story.
In last summer's wildfires near Halifax, some families lost nearly everything.
It was very difficult to go back, to dig through the rubble.
Steps to nowhere.
For Maureen McGee, this is all that was left. Now the house is almost rebuilt with the help of insurance, but the family turned to the crowdfunding site GoFundMe to cover unexpected costs.
Things as simple as gas and takeout food and going to get some clothing.
Over the past 5 years, it's been around a 34% year-over-year average increase in these kind of campaigns.
New data from GoFundMe says these campaigns raised more than $24 million since 2019, a drop in the bucket compared to the fuller cost of these disasters. $14 billion alone in insured losses over the same period, and uninsured losses are estimated to be even higher.
I think we're playing catch up in a way.
Experts say the growing reliance on crowdfunding shows gaps in how governments and individuals prepare for natural disasters.
What we need to know and understand is that our most vulnerable population are at highest risk of all these climate perils.
They told me basically when I phoned, they said there's no coverage, don't bother putting a claim in.
This school bus driver lives on a floodplain. She turned to crowdfunding after her Alberta home was flooded.
Your home is your safe place. And when something like this happens, it does really shake you to the core.
But she didn't get close to the goal of $25,000, and nearly a year later is still trying to repair her home. As the frequency and cost of climate-related disasters increase across Canada, the federal government says it's examining how it distributes disaster relief money to provinces. Ben Shingler, CBC News, Montreal.
First Nations in Canada are digging in for wildfire season. Ottawa has promised millions in federal support and training. But now, firefighters are using whatever they have on hand. The CBC's Sam Sampson takes us to the front lines.
In a wildfire, this force and this force save entire ecosystems.
I love trees, right? So when I see them burn, I don't like that. So
so I like to go out, and the aspect of saving nature is really heartwarming, I guess.
But saving people and homes is what inspired Calvin Charles to take up firefighting. 8 years ago, his own home in northern Saskatchewan was almost destroyed.
After getting evacuated and stuff, I didn't really like it, and I felt like helpless.
So he and others from around the north are learning to use what they can to protect their homes. Water from a half-frozen lake to douse flames, pickaxes to manually dig fire breaks when machines just can't get to them. Ottawa recently set aside $175 million for First Nations to deal with this and future fire seasons. And it wants standardized firefighting training in First Nations by next year. A tough ask when some places still don't have basic infrastructure.
And there's some communities, especially rural and remote communities, that even have access coming in and out to get training. And we have to keep that all in the back of our minds, that not everybody's downtown Toronto.
Ottawa says wildfire caused the evacuation of more than 90 First Nations last year. This year, it's giving each First Nation in Alberta money to hire an emergency management coordinator. The money could be crucial for the Athabasca Chippewan First Nation. Some areas can only be evacuated by air or water, and right now boats could get trapped by low water levels.
People in the community say that they've never seen it this bad in their lifetime. The whole community is at risk if there was a forest fire that burnt out of control.
That fear of getting stuck keeps these men going, to keep the fires at bay, to save lives and their homes. Sam Sampson, CBC News, on the shores of Lac La Planche, Saskatchewan.
In Yellowknife tomorrow. Swimming season is going to be right around the corner any day now. That is warm for sure. That is our show for tonight. Hopefully you can get out and enjoy some of the nice evenings we're seeing across the north right now. For news anytime, you can always visit our website, cbc.ca/north. Thank you so much for watching. Tonight is night 2 of the second round of the NHL playoffs. That game is up next. It's Boston versus the Florida Panthers. Now, Northbeat will be on even earlier tomorrow night, right after Igalac at 6:30 Eastern, 4:30 Mountain, and 3:30 Yukon time. That's so that everyone can tune in to watch the Hurricanes play the Rangers. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.
Scare me. Look out! Ain't nobody gonna stop me. We have a new world record.
Oh my God. We're a team.
We fight the best we can. Unbelievable.
Thank
you for choosing Plan B.
Tell me what I need to do to save my family.
Please enter your date of travel.
I can't do this anymore.
If you could go back, change things, would you do it?
So, you want to watch CBC News Explore, a new kind of news channel. Well, here's one way to find us. We're on CBC Gem. Stream anytime for free. CBC News Explore.